After dressing as a villain canon fodder male Zerg author, Shepard copywriting after LUMO got into the Zerg script, he was asked to play the role of a canon fodder male without OOC. The original owner is cruel, his IQ is low, and the original owner is lazy. LUMO executed every request ruthlessly, seeing the female's increasingly numb face, his heart was full of guilt and guilt. "I'm so sorry to let you meet a scum like me. I thought that the female was heartbroken and awakened from the dream. From then on, she would give up her fantasy, face reality, and become a calm and rational worm." Although LUMO was heartbroken, he was still conscientious and never softened. But when the female was rolling in the room holding the quilt while calling his name blushing, LUMO couldn't help but feel a little stunned. "Yeah, shao. How can this be good?" Ling had never seen such a strange male. The male said that he hated him, but gave him a worm egg. The male cursed him as weak and useless, but let him go free. The male never said that he loved him, but he never saw other females. Ling was confused and at a loss. My friend patted the table, "Isn't this just tsundere?" Ling suddenly realized. "I see. The male lord, he really is a great bug." 3 years later. Lu Moshin looked at Ling hopelessly, "Whatever, destroy it, hurry up." Very strange. How did his scum design collapse? Being mistaken as a arrogant attack X is really arrogant without knowing it. Content label, sweet text of the strong and natural combination system. Search keywords, protagonist, LUMO, Ling supporting role others, 1 sentence introduction, Zerg husbands and husbands love each other sweetly. Purpose, it is incumbent on you and me to build a harmonious society. Brief comment on works, this is a unique Zerg article. This article tells that after the lonely protagonist enters the Zerg world, he always adheres to his principles and is not assimilated by the external environment. With such persistence, he punishes evil and promotes good, and he redeems after the miserable life of others. I finally got my own warmth, such a gentle story. He completed the task, made the whole world a better place in his own way, allowed good and evil to be rewarded, let his true heart not be disappointed, and reversed the trajectory of the world. The writing style of this article is very contagious. Readers can deeply feel the atmosphere and emotions in it. The plot setting is interesting, the front and back are interlocking, sometimes laughing and sometimes sad, every step is so unexpected and reasonable. Coupled with interesting and vivid characters and humorous brushwork, the entire text can be read in one go, very smooth. What is commendable is the novel setting, the burden of constantly reversing, is a refreshing, happy and warm little story. The morning sun slanted in from the window lattice, and the beam of light fell on the soft bed, coating the teenager on the bed with a soft golden light. His fair skin was flushed from sleep, and the tip of his nose was sweaty. He slept extremely peacefully. Soon, there were regular knocks outside the door. Tuk tuk. Tuk tuk. Master Lu, are you up yet? Master, you should have breakfast. Lumo opened his eyes, and his emerald green eyes glowed with a shallow golden light in the sunlight, making his whole person look very pure. Everything is so beautiful if you ignore the unlovable life in his eyes, it is really beautiful. The little assistant of Raiders reminds you, your scum index has improved to 0 in the past month, please keep working hard. Lumo looked at the ceiling blankly, and uttered a word after a long time, I really suspect this is a bug. The Raiders assistant will never have bugs. Lumo slowly pulled up the quilt to cover his head, and turned into a maggot in pain on the bed. Why? Why? He has obviously worked hard to be a scum, he has worked so hard. He suspects that the whole world is targeting him. Lumo came to this world 3 years ago, and was truly shocked by the setting of this world for a whole year. Although the humans here look no different from those on Earth, their real prototypes are all kinds of huge bugs. Naturally, there is no distinction between male and female insects. There are only males, females, and subfamilies. The number of males is extremely rare, and the ratio to females is almost astonishing 100 to 1. Putting such a ratio in human society will inevitably cause huge turmoil, but in the world of the Zerg, it has reached a weird balance. The Zerg tries its best to feed the males. Every male is a treasure of the Zerg. Even a male with a low genetic level is better treated than a female with a grade B or higher. As for Lumo, dressed as a poor male, the only requirement the system gave him was please do your best to play as a scum male. After completing the plot, you will be rewarded based on your scum value, and the rewards can be brought back to your original world. Lumo was stunned by the generous bonus. When he thought that he would never use 996 again in the future, he would no longer need to contribute to the boss's villa. His whole body burst into incomparable enthusiasm. Do scum? I'm super good at it. With such enthusiasm, he worked the road of scum for 3 years. The result was extremely bleak. No matter how scumbag he was, the insects were extremely grateful for their eyes. The females here seemed to have that serious disease. Lumo took a deep breath and sat up, his appearance reflected in the mirror on the bedside. The black-haired boy is elegant and handsome, with a natural smile that makes him look very intimate even without any expression. Dissatisfaction appeared in those lanky eyes, as if he was very upset with this appearance. Immediately afterwards, the young man in the mirror raised his chin and squinted his eyes slightly. All the intimacy was gone, only contempt and arrogance remained. Like all other spoiled males, he is domineering, unreasonable, and self-righteous. The appearance of a pure bear kid makes people angry when they see it. Lumo nodded, feeling that today's condition is exceptionally good. It is the state that can madly earn him a scum value of 3,000 scum. He jumped out of bed and opened the door wearing furry slippers. Outside the door was a tall female in a housekeeper's uniform. After seeing Lumo, he respectfully said, "Master, it's time for breakfast." The female is pushing the breakfast cart, and the steaming bread is paired with the creamy soup, which makes people smell the appetite. The arrogant young boy looked at the housekeeper calmly, and a shadow appeared in his eyes. He stretched out his hand and picked up the bowl with his slender and white fingers. The next moment his face changed drastically, he suddenly poured soup on the housekeeper. "Do you want to burn me to death so hot?" The female immediately knelt down on one knee, "Please punish the master. The soup is actually not hot anymore. Instead, it is carefully and properly kept at the best temperature to drink, so that the housekeeper is not burned." The thick soup flowed all the way from the housekeeper's face to the clothes, soiling the clean and tidy clothes, and I could feel the extremely uncomfortable touch at a glance. Lumo couldn't bear to turn his head away, thinking it was too scumbag, and he started to get angry. He looked forward to it in his heart. How is it? Is it fruitful? One of the secrets of scum, find fault for no reason. I just can't get through with you. The raider's assistant did not respond. The female did not respond. No, it doesn't matter, he still has something to do. Lumo pursed his lips, tilted his head, and smiled at the female worm. "My housekeeper, if you want me to say, you want to make me happy, it's better." He stretched out his hand, suddenly pulled the housekeeper into his arms, and touched his cheek affectionately. "Why don't you use your body to make me happy?" As soon as he spoke, even Lumo himself couldn't help but twist his face. The housekeeper has been working for this family from the generation of his father-in-law, and he is a respected elder for him. The second secret of scum, workplace harassment. Greasy boss. The third secret of the scum, start with the kind elders. No humanity. These two secrets are fused together, and the lethality is almost comparable to a nuclear bomb, and even the system is amazed by it. Lumo, your progress is amazing. Lumo gritted his teeth, released his mental power, and trembled into the butler's mental sea. After 3 years in this world, he also secretly learned a lot of common sense in this world. For example, his current behavior, something that can only be done between extremely intimate partners, can be compared to a kiss on the earth. He resisted the nausea in his heart and smiled at the housekeeper. your spirit is really interesting. The butler was shocked. Seeing the male worm's face quickly paled, the butler was heartbroken. It's actually mental strengthening. Zergs are born with mental powers, but females' mental powers are deep, but they can't be used. As time goes by, the mental sea becomes more frantic as the years grow, but they cannot be channeled, which will eventually affect the female's physical state. The average lifespan of females without a partner is about 100 years shorter, which is why only the males who can use their mental powers can guide the females. This is not only the length of life, the spiritual sea of the guided females will no longer be violent, and they can experience the rare peace. It's just, this kind of grooming is too burdensome for the delicate males. Every time they are groomed, they will be exhausted, and some may even fall into a coma. Therefore, only the extremely favored females can the males reluctantly guide their mental power. Other females, only with a lot of money, can they barely obtain some down and out males to help them channel their spirits. Master, always like that, his mouth is bad, but his heart is much softer than other males. The housekeeper stretched out his hand and held down Lumo, his eyes firmly said, Master, don't be like this, you shouldn't be like this. Ding dong. If the rejection is received, the value will be increased by 10. Lumo was crying with joy at the time. Seeing the butler's resisting expression, how could Lumo stop? That must be increased efforts. His psychic thread was madly freestyle swimming in the butler's frantic mental sea, and his hands were up and down. Speaking of it, the butler really hated this. There seemed to be a hurricane in the mental sea. Lumo's mental power was hidden, and he could hardly find north. But a man who is stunned by the reward will never give up. When encountering a hurricane group, he fights bravely. When encountering a vortex, he is brave enough to move forward, even if it is a huge wave. He can't stop his crazy sliding oars. I don't know how long it took, the sea finally stopped slowly and became calm. Lumo fell back, sitting on the ground and panting, cold sweat dripping all over. The molester is really hard work. The housekeeper looked at Lumo with a complicated expression, and said in a deep voice, Master, please don't do this next time. Lumo raised his chin arrogantly, and said coldly, Don't worry about things you shouldn't care about, you are tired, so let's get out of here. Yes. Lumo. Seeing the housekeeper retreating, Lumo opened his mouth, heartbroken. No, I'm so scumbag, you should scold me. Better to beat me up again. Don't pity that I'm a delicate flower, you should hang my wicked feudal landlord on the street lamp. Is it someone who has not experienced 9 years of compulsory education, alas? Lumo squatted on the ground, picking up the bread that he had knocked over just now, and biting down half of it in one bite. The crispy outer skin and the soft inner core made him squint. It's so delicious. At this moment, the system that had always been calm and sensible suddenly alarmed in his mind. Notice. Energetic strikes ahead. The main characters of the plot are coming soon. Please organize your makeup and face with the fullest scumbag. Lumo, what is it? It's been 3 years before you told me that there is still a plot? Is he not prepared for this? He subconsciously looked out of the window, and in the bright sky, a meteor shot across the sky, and with an unmatched aura, it fell towards Lumo's direction. Boom! Like a blast, the meteor suddenly fell in front of Lumo's eyes. The male insect protection mechanism that he carried with him worked at this time, and the soft airbag popped out, enveloping Lumo. However, Lumo still fainted. The strength of the male worm was not much different from that of the earthlings. For the female worm, the strength comparable to the stroking force had already caused him to have a concussion. What? He stuck his head out of the airbag with difficulty and met a pair of bright red eyes. A tall and full-blooded man stood up from the pit on the floor. He was wearing a slim uniform and his handsome face was full of hostility. He looked at Lumo coldly, and the next moment, the sharp blade hit Lumo's neck. Male. The man's face was gloomy. Get out. Ding dong. Be strongly insulted. The value increased by 100. Life threatened. The value has increased by 1000. Slag level breakthrough. The primary reward package has been distributed, please check it in the backpack later. LUMO. LUMO. At this moment, the full of blood man looked like a big gold nugget walking in his eyes, making him tremble and almost cry. Are you an angel sent from heaven? The next moment, the walking gold mine closed its eyes and fell down. LUMO quickly reached out and caught the big gold mine. The man's face was against his neck, and it felt delicate and hot to the touch. LUMO was startled. He smelled a scent of blood and rust. He always thought it was blood from a man. He only found out when he got closer. It seemed to be the smell of a man's pheromone. Holding the big gold mine, he whispered, "Please, don't die. My performance depends on you." What fell in LUMO's arms was undoubtedly a mature female. He is tall, handsome, and solemn. Judging by LUMO's 3 years of experience, even if the Zerg has a strange appearance, he has never seen silver-haired red eyes nearby. However, there was no similar feature in the Empire's aristocratic genealogy. If this were not the case, LUMO would have thought he was an aristocratic female based on his classical and elegant appearance. The male was not too tall. LUMO was still a small male who had not undergone metamorphosis at this time. His arms were not long, so he barely hugged the female. It is not so much that he hugged the female worm, it looked like he was lying on the other side's arms. A sudden sense of peace of mind enveloped LUMO, and the places where he touched the other's skin were pressed like this, making him reluctant to let go. LUMO lowered his head, rubbing the tip of his nose against the opponent's neck. The butler who hurried up the stairs after hearing the sound saw this scene in front of him. The tall, silver-haired female fainted all over her wounds, and his family had always at least on the surface mean and indifferent young master, quietly leaning on the female, like a newborn koala. The butler couldn't help being silent. Master Lu is not actually the elder's child. When he was discovered by the elders, he was just an egg lying alone in a trench on the battlefield, dying. I don't know how long I have been on the battlefield, the white eggshell is covered with blood and sand, looking like a dud. The male worms still in the egg need more comfort. If the comfort is not enough, they will become a sensitive and fragile personality like the young master, and may even suffer from skin hunger and thirst. Zergs suffering from this symptom will be extremely attached to contact, hugs, kisses with other Zergs. But he has his own pride, never willing to show his weakness, but with that arrogant appearance, awkwardly close to other insects, just to get some comfort. The housekeeper sighed, seeing LUMO's eyes become more loving. Being watched lovingly, the scum value is deducted 10%. LUMO. He raised his head suddenly, with blood and tears in his heart, and stared at the housekeeper sadly. Get out. Is he easy for him? Master. The butler knelt down and touched LUMO's head. Do you want him? From the first sight of this female, the housekeeper knew his identity. Silver hair is a characteristic of the Klein bug, and it is also the only silver-haired population of the entire Zerg. The Klein bug with the purest blood has a pair of pigeon blood jewel-like pupils. But what this beauty brought to the Klein bug was an extinction disaster. Their mental strength and stamina are the best nourishment for other Zerg species. The male worm swallows the mental power of the Klein worm, and the chance of a successful metamorphosis is greatly increased, and it may even initiate a second metamorphosis, while the female worm swallows the Klein worm's throat, which greatly increases the chance of pregnancy. The most amazing thing is yes, almost all males are born. From ancient times to the present, Klein insects have been slaves kept in captivity by higher Zergs, and were born as fertilizers for other Zergs. The housekeeper looked down at the silver-haired female. I don't know how this Klein bug survived. But no matter what, now that he lives here, Master wants to eat him, that is also his destiny. Master, the butler asked again, do you want to eat him? The daylight shone from the broken roof and hung over Lumo. At the junction of light and darkness, the butler was leaning on the door frame, his eyes gloomy. Lumo looked at the housekeeper blankly. Eat the females. Eat the females? In the next moment, he was clever and blessed to the soul. No wonder. No wonder his scum value is so difficult to increase, he actually forgot the most important point. In the Zerg society, females have almost no bottom line tolerating males, which is the unique right of males. But rights are always accompanied by obligations, and the obligations of males are the reproduction of the Zerg. In other words, as long as he doesn't fulfill this obligation, no matter what he does, he is a real scum in the Zerg. Lumo's eyes were bright, and he nodded solemnly to the housekeeper, I understand. It doesn't work here to attract mad bees, waves, and butterflies to spend time and drink on the spot. That would only make the Zerg praise him. Praise him. Even list him as a heroic father. If he wants to be a scum, he has to be a loyal male. Few births and better births, scum for a lifetime, it is best not to give birth to a single one. Lumo looked at the female in his arms, and the corners of his mouth slowly raised, it's you. He stood up, pushed the butler out of the door, and joked in a very good mood, the next scene is extremely bloody, and the idle bugs retreat at the same speed. The heavy door slowly closed, and the butler stared at the silver-haired female with complicated emotions. The fate is so strange. The male worms are born with respect and superiority, the female worms are born as insignificant consumables, and the fate of the Klein worm is even more miserable. But, he was loyal to the Lu family, he would only prioritize the interests of Master Lumo, and the life of a female worm was not as important as Lumo's transformation in his heart. When the door was about to be fully closed, the silver-haired female suddenly turned her face slightly, and her cold bright red eyes pierced into the butler's eyes. The housekeeper shuddered subconsciously. It should be, nothing will happen, right? After all, Klein insects, even females, would not have any resistance. If the housekeeper was more cautious and wasn't so eager to let Lumo eat the females, if he was willing to check the old books in the family, he would know how critical the situation is now. The Klein bug does not have any resistance. This is true, but it is also wrong. The more elegant the posture of those nobles while enjoying the Klein bug, the more the hidden reality behind them. From the moment the Klein bug crawled out of the eggshell, the imprisonment began. They were injected with medicine, breaking their spine, and becoming a mass of flesh that could only wait to die. The untransformed Klein meat has limited efficacy, but no worm is willing to let them grow to the posture they should be. After all, a pure-blooded, fully grown Klein worm cannot be controlled. And now, the female worm in the room is a fully mature and extremely dangerous pure-blood Klein worm. Ling hadn't seen such a weak male for a long time. In the central city of the Empire, no males below D level have been born for more than 10 years, and many A-level males have even appeared. All the worms are looking forward to the rumored S-class male worms reappearing, thinking that this is the mother who once again took care of the Zerg. What mother cares about? It's just a high-level male who was born by devouring Klein insects. Since he was an adult, Ling no longer concealed his prominent silver-haired red eyes. No matter where he went, he could feel those greedy gazes. From the moment they saw him, they had already begun to imagine how to treat him. Share food. He just recharged, like a quiet spider, laying invisible threads around him, waiting for the prey to plunge into the net by himself. This time it will be no exception. The juvenile male put his arms on his shoulders and moved the bed. Ling was almost familiar with the following process. The male worms will stretch out their weak threads of spiritual power, penetrate into his spiritual sea, and extract spiritual power little by little, so that their spiritual power becomes more tenacious. But greedy and ignorant, they won't find out that although the spiritual power they absorb is sweet, they are mixed with violent toxins. By the time they noticed it, it was too late. The toxin destroyed the nerves of their whole body and made them immobile. They could only watch the Klein female, who should have been unable to resist, hold a long knife and lead them to the abyss of eternal death. Am I really going to do this? The male worm's immature voice sounded, as if he was talking to someone. Ling sneered in his heart, why bother? No, I didn't counsel, I can't counsel. But I am a minor now. The male worm said solemnly, I think this hardware condition may not allow me to do this. This is not a sophistry. While talking, the male used his cool fingers to poke the mess away from Ling's face, and then it seemed to be pulling the fabric of the cuffs to wipe away the sweat from his face. Although Ling was very patient, he had to admit that it was much more comfortable. But the always indifferent psychology has ripples of irritability. What is this male doing? Is it because you are too poor and weak, and you don't even know how to extract mental power? And, the male murmured, to be honest, don't you think he looks a little too good looking? Is he real? Immediately afterwards, there was a very soft touch on Ling's cheek, as soft as a feather brushing a dandelion, and then he heard the male worm's voice in awe. He is real. Ling. Ling hated people talking about his appearance, they always stared at his silver hair and red eyes, as if looking at the color of a piece of meat. But the strange thing was that he didn't hate the tone of this little male. It's just not annoying. He told himself, this may be a seemingly innocent male worm that is deeper in the city. He is testing himself. He wants to gain his trust so that he can swallow himself more safely. After all, such a loss, he has already eaten it once. A black-eyed male worm appeared in Ling's mind again. He pretended to be so lifelike that Ling was almost deceived by him. He said that females and males are equal, he said that he would protect Ling, he also said that he would only love him in this life. But in the end, the male did not even give him the identity of the female monarch. The black-haired black-eyed male divides love into many parts, and Ling is only one of them. But he wants it all. He has no sense of security, and the Klein bug is the most insecure Zerg. Since that male married another female, Ling didn't want it anymore. Song Jianzhi made him feel sick. If it hadn't been for them that they had not yet concluded a contract, Ling would have chosen to blow himself up and drag Song Jianzhi together. It's a pity that they never made an agreement. Thinking of the past, Ling Yi's calm emotions took a turn for the worse. He lost the patience to wait and just wanted to kill the chirping little male. Under the cover of the quilt, Ling silently drew the knife from his waist, pointed the tip of the knife at the male's chest, ready to go. There was no change in his expression, as if he was still in a coma. Lumo looked at this beautiful and illusory face, his face was involuntarily hot. This was not out of admiration or possessiveness, but simply shocked by the appearance. Immediately afterwards, there was a hint of cowardice. He took a deep breath and leaned down towards the female, then gently touched the female's soft lips. You are my prince. The silver eyelashes trembled slightly, and Lumo watched the female open her eyes in a daze, looking at him calmly with pigeon blood jewel-like eyes. Lumo. This is a pair of weathered eyes, although the color is bright, but it is covered with a hard shell, which is thousands of miles away. Those sharp killing intents have been overwhelmed layer by layer, hiding in the deepest place. Ling calmly looked at Lumo. Female prince. He didn't change his face, but his heart was shaking. One male may have a dozen, dozens, or even hundreds of females, but the position of the female is only one from beginning to end. Even individuals who are completely loyal to the Zerg will give birth to small selfishness under the drive of love. The transcendent status of the female monarch is a compromise reached between the Zerg society and all the individuals of the Zerg under the task of maintaining the overall reproduction. No male worm promises a female seat before he reaches adulthood. After all, no one knows how high a male worm can reach its genetic level after metamorphosis. History has recorded a male who was only D-class when he was born. He has experienced countless adventures, and he has actually completed 5 unprecedented transformations and became a male of nearly S-class. If the status of the female monarch had been given to females who were not strong enough, it was only because of the impulse of that young age. When the years pass and the feelings are weak, the male will definitely regret it in the future. Ling lowered his eyes, silver eyelashes covering the thoughts in his eyes. If this male is smart enough, the clever male must be able to detect his identity, perhaps from beginning to end. The male has been acting. What should be killed? What should be killed? The palm of Ling's hand holding a long knife was slightly sweaty. He had been wandering on the edge of life and death for many years, and he had seen too many deceptions and pretenses. When he can't tell, it's best to do it directly. Why did he hesitate? This place is remote, and the opponent is just a weak male. It is the safest choice to do it. But Ling Gang's determined heart shook slightly at the thought of the other party's force that was blowing on his face, softer than the breeze. Cats raised since childhood always covet the freedom outside when they grow up, but the scarred wild cat picked up from the street is very clingy. Just a simple action can pry away the cold heart of the female worm, but cherish it if he hurts him, the female will build a heavier defense. Ling watched the young male worm subconsciously pinching the white fingers of the sheet because of the cramps, and finally made a decision in his heart. He raised his head and said, "You want me to be your prince? Why? If this male has evil thoughts and he wants to gain Ling's trust, he will definitely pretend to be innocent. It's completely like a little country male who is fascinated by his appearance and has a new love. He respects the female, loves his partner, and is enthusiastic and brave. This type has appeared in countless female dreams, and no female can reject such a male." Ling's index finger rubbed the blade, and the sharp tool cut his fingertips smoothly. The blood oozing quickly became bloody. On the surface, he looked at the male indifferently, but his heartbeat became more intense. If the opponent behaves so perfectly, his blade will pierce the male's heart without hesitation. He will never be deceived again. At this moment, a huge amount of thoughts turned in Lu Mo's brain. That's right, he has to be loyal, so that he can get pointers from the Zerg society. However, loyal males are a better choice for females. Is it the accusation from the society, or the constant resentment and killing intent of the pillow worm? Lumo, he wants it all. You have to figure out one thing. The young master squinted Lang Kui's eyes and said arrogantly, "You have fallen into my territory. You are completely mine. From body to mind, I will control everything about you. You must not resist." Lumo stretched out his hand, poked the female's soft cheek, and poked his head tilted. "You may not know, my reputation here is not good. I don't want simple obedience. Only a female monarch can form a blood bond with a male worm, and from then on can share spirit and heart." "Understood." Lumo Zime smiled, "If you dare to have two hearts, I will kill you directly." The reedied female opened her eyes slightly, looking at Lumo in a daze. "Big, probably scared. The host's acting skills are making rapid progress." Lumo himself felt stubborn, and the goosebumps on his arms and legs were one after another, and his whole body was as numb as if he had touched an electric switch. Making evil, this society is already difficult for females, and he also said such a lot of antisocial remarks, which will definitely leave a huge shadow in the females' hearts. He twisted his head, concealing the guilty conscience and guilt in his eyes, and said cruelly, "The wedding will be held soon. You have no other choice but to become my toy obediently." After thinking about it, Lumo leaned down, pondered his lower strength, and bit his teeth on the female's earlobe. Houndstooth sank deeply, and then a slight smell of rust overflowed, and the female's body trembled slightly without saying a word. The bright red tooth marks remained on the white jade-like earlobes, very vivid. Lumo leaned over, his voice whispered like a demon, "This is my mark." After that, he was finally satisfied and left the room leisurely. He planted the seeds of hatred in the female worm, happily waiting for the hatred to take root, and then swallowed him. The heavy wooden door was closed again, and the interior was quiet again. After the early morning, the sun became brighter and brighter, and the light like molten gold leaked from the roof and caged the silver-haired female. The long silver hair spread out, and he sat down in the sun for a long time. Then finally took his hand out of the bedding, opened his mouth and bit his scarred finger. A faint red glow climbed up from his neck, gradually smearing his cheeks, and even the red eyes were glowing. The blood contract is two-way. Females will always belong to males, and males will always belong to females. At this moment, the lack of security in Klein's worm's nature finally got his feet. Master! As soon as he left the house, the butler greeted him with concern. He looked at Lumo suspiciously. It's over. Lumo nodded reservedly. The butler said in confusion, Are you so fast? Lumo. 5 points will be deducted if the ability to be questioned is not good. Lumo really wanted to cry. He wanted to cry loudly and beg the butler to let him go, for help. But he can't, the scum male is cold and ruthless, and the scum male has no tears. He can only cast a glance at the housekeeper blankly. I want to A&D. Lumo got stuck. He was overly engaged just now, but he didn't even ask the female's name. I want to marry that female. You are going to prepare for the wedding. Lumo nodded. My wedding can't be simple, the more grand the better. The housekeeper's eyes widened. What, isn't that Klein bug dead? What's more terrifying is that you also seduce the young master. That's right. The male worm stopped for a moment, then turned around and said, There is one more thing. The butler pricked his ears with the last hope that was almost imploring. A nasty smile appeared on the male's face. It must be done according to the female's specifications. This is the only wedding in my life. The steward's legs are weak. Lumo's words clearly declared, from now on, he will never marry other females. If it's other females, it's just Klein insects. It will definitely bring countless troubles to the young master. Master, I will never allow it. Master, do you know what you are doing? Master, they will certainly not allow it. Their only last wish is to let me take good care of you, you to shut up. The black-haired and green-eyed male yelled impatiently, saying word by word, My business is not your turn. The housekeeper's desperate look and sobbing screams turned into joyful system prompts in Lumo's mind. Slag value +1, slag value +1, slag value +10. He clenched his fists with excitement. After 3 years of detours, he finally embarked on the right path. And on a distant planet. This is the Emperor star of the Zerg, in a prosperous starship port. The black-haired and black-eyed male just laughed at Yan Yan, and suddenly frowned slightly, covering his chest. What's wrong with you? Song Jiancha grinned reluctantly, and said gently, It's nothing, but suddenly I feel a little depressed. Seeing this smile, the tall female on the opposite side blushed and screamed wildly in her heart, How could there be such a gentle male? My mother goddess! Is this real? I really want to be his female. The female waiter is enough. Female slaves are fine too. As long as you can be with Song Jianchu, let him do anything. A cold voice broke the atmosphere between them, Master, let's go. The incoming man is a strong and tall military female, and the military rank on his shoulders shows that his position is not low. Song Jianchu looked at him, but there was a sad, wry smile on his face. Wenger, will Ling really forgive me? I'm afraid. How dare he? Wenger was angry at the thought of this. He kept seeing Ling not pleasing to his eyes, but only saved the life of Song Jianchu when he was a child, and became the white moonlight in Song Jianchu's heart, but it was clear that he was the female who accompanied Song Jianchu to grow up. Sure enough, they are females with little education. The males themselves are extremely noble. Males like Song Jianchu are rare in the world. They treat all females with respect and gentleness. He and the other 3 female worms worked so hard to get a place in Song Jianchu's heart. Which one is not carefully regarded as a treasure to Song Jianchu? As a result, the female Ling dared to put a black face on Song Jianchu, or even ran away. Wenger really wants to persuade Song Jianchu to forget it, but Song Jianchu is so gentle, how can he rest assured that Ling will leave without leaving? When it was replaced by another male, Ling had his wings broken long ago, and he could barely quell the male's anger with a few hundred strokes with a whip. I am really spoiled. As if seeing Wenger's resentment, Song Jianchu suppressed his smile and said seriously, Wenger, Ling is very important in my heart. Okay, I'll accompany you to find him. But before boarding the starship, Song Jianchu's heart beat another beat. He clutched his chest, his face darkened. It seemed that something in his grasp was gradually out of his grasp, it made him feel very bad. No matter what, Ling Xian must be found first. Wenger, can you hurry up? Wenger turned his back to Song Jianchu, and his mood was even more depressed. But this is not right. Song Jianchu has treated them as equal as possible. This is all Ling's fault. He comforted himself in this way, but still responded, okay, hero. The starship accelerated suddenly and disappeared into the vast universe. Most of the male worms are basking in the sun and blowing the air, lying there waiting for the female worms to serve. Strictly speaking, subfamilies feel much better than females, and many males will marry one or two subfamilies and put them at home. But the functionality of subfamilies is limited to this, their abilities are far inferior to females, and comparable to low-level males. Such worms, naturally, cannot get enough remuneration in society. No matter how confused males are, they won't marry a bunch of subfamilies who don't give birth, they know very well. Females bring property and heirs, and subfamilies are nothing but playthings. Only a handful of lucky subfamilies can be picked by males, while other subfamilies who fail to compete have no income and no support when they become adults, and most of them become vagrants in the Zerg society. Carrying a baggage on their backs, they tossed between the lower-level planets. And the planet where LUMO is located is an extremely backward planet. This planet was once young. The air was fresh and the water was clear. The birds sang cyan songs, and under the support of the long wind, they crossed the mountains and the sea and sent blessings of lightness. But now it is very old. At dusk, the huge red sun covered half of the sky, and the rusted atmosphere was full of fierce radiation particles. The sky is yellow and dry, and the earth is barren and cracked. This is a dying planet. The former prosperous and brand new city is now in dilapidated condition, and the almost abandoned port ushered in today's last starship. As soon as the hatch opened, countless worn-out and exhausted subfamilies swarmed out, and their eyes were still burning with a little flame of hope, but they were destined to be annihilated on this dying planet. LUMO quietly leaned against the window, overlooking the city. The tall building he is in is located in the center of the entire city. It is so magnificent and magnificent. When night comes, it will become the only light in the entire city. And just a few steps away, there are slums everywhere, full of violence, gambling, and murder. This is the power of capital. LUMO thought, almost fascinated. What a wonderful view, he had to admire himself for actually coming up with such an idea. This is where the stray insects live. He collects these stray insects into his sweatshop, so that they can sleep endlessly and work for themselves day and night. 1996 is a trivial matter, day and night shifts are arranged. The assembly line is up. The harder they work, the richer LUMO's fortune will be. Ah, look at this wine glass, he raised the glass and chanted in a dreamy tone, does it look like the guillotine of the evil capitalist? The tone of the system is even more dreamy, it's almost like Queen Mary's guillotine. There is nothing difficult in the world, I'm afraid the people who care about it. LUMO sipped the chicken soup in the cup, the day of hanging on the street lamp is coming soon. The system is surging with passion, internaxonal must be realized. LUMO was moved to tears. Everything is fine. However, no matter how beautiful the future they look forward to, it also requires a long time of arrangement and guidance, and the scum value that is within reach cannot be let go. This scum value within reach, naturally refers to the hostile female. As soon as he appeared, he immediately made Lumo break through the level of scum he hadn't moved for 3 years, and Lumo finally got the primary reward package that he had been greedy for a long time. Closing his eyes, a delicate blue package lay quietly in the sea of spirit. Gently touched with spiritual power, accompanied by cheerful and festive music, colorful rewards scattered all over the floor. White items: Primary Mental Power Recovery Agent X99 Elementary Stamina Booster X99 Elementary Agility Amplifier X99 Blue Item, Planetary Geography Guide X1 Species Encyclopedia Illustrated Book X1 Purple Item, Plot Character Information X1 LUMO, Nothing. System: This is the most generous reward I have ever given, the system faintly said. If you have seen me before, you will definitely cry now. Not to mention how buggy the 2 illustrated books are. The amplifiers alone are things that don't exist in this world, but it's a pity that Lumo didn't realize this. He just shrugged and opened the plot character information that was shining with bright purple light. Among the many black silhouettes of people, only one of them was lit. The reedied and silver-haired female was holding a long knife and looking straight ahead coldly. Lumo whistled. Cool, the system is silent. If it also has an expression, then it must be uneasy. The protagonist of this world is a traverser named Song Jianchu, which is the same as all the development of Zerg culture. His concept of freedom, equality, and respect is a dimensionality reduction blow to the indigenous males here. Countless females were captured by his charm, and he also married several outstanding females. Ling is one of them. In the near future, he will be completely overwhelmed by the charm of Song Jianchu and become his waitress. This is why the system gave Lumo such a generous elementary reward package. Many hosts are not only not afraid of the dangers of a life of 9 deaths, but also extremely excited, but if they find that the person they are interested in has a sense of belonging, complaints from the good guys are trivial, and some simply fight with the system. The system only hopes that these rewards can block Lumo's mouth, so that he must not make trouble. Lumo looked at the intelligence. He didn't notice the abnormal silence of the system at all, and thought thoughtfully, so he loves Song Jianchu deeply? System: Yes. Lumo: The kind that lives and die? The system started to panic. Yes. Lumo's voice was terribly deep. Never fall in love with me? The system closed its eyes in despair. Yes. Lumo put away the book and took a deep breath. Fuck, it's awesome. The system suspects that it has heard it wrong. What? Eyes not it? Lumo exuberantly said. You think, his heartworm is the kindest, beautiful, and powerful male in the world. He will never change the male worm until death, but at this time he was forced to marry one of the worst. The male worm on the table, that's right, it's me, Lumo. System meditation: Do you mean, he will definitely hate, resent, and wish to kill me? Lumo waved his big hand and said awe-inspiringly, it shouldn't be too late, let's force him to do it. Despite seeing the strong wind and waves, the system couldn't help being overwhelmed by Lumo's shamelessness. He sincerely praised, among so many hosts I have led, your shamelessness is second to none. Lumo smiled slightly, thank you, thank you. Ling was lying on the soft bed, and there were traces of repairs on the ceiling above his head. The tinkers here were not very skilled, and the roof seemed very abrupt. Just as abrupt as the self who appeared here. There was also an expensive communication device on the bed, and news kept coming from it. Ling, where are you? I am worried about you. I'm sorry for neglecting you, but I can't leave you. I will come to you now. Ling looked at these pieces of news with a cold expression. Among the females around Song Jianchu, he is the oldest one. Song Jianchu often complained that he didn't understand the taste, his self-esteem was too arrogant, and he never let down his body to please Song Jianchu, unlike a female. At first, Ling would be a little at a loss. Every time Song Jianchu smiled contentedly, he whispered, who else likes you besides me? Looking back now, Ling Cai noticed a trace of malice from that smile. It seemed like it was a fun thing to make him sad because of frustration. Over time, Ling got used to Song Jianchu's complaints and stopped taking it seriously. Even when Song Jianchu flirted with other females, Ling would even go against the nature of Klein insects and forcibly suppress the urge to kill other females. If he had seen these news a day ago, he would have felt very pleased. After all, this is the first time Song Jianchu has been so caring about himself. But now Ling was clearly aware that there was no fluctuation in his heart, even his disgust was gone, as if it were a strange male. Ling, if you see, will you answer me? Ling picked up the communication device blankly, applying light pressure on his index and middle fingers to crush the extremely hard communication device. Accompanied by the cracking sound, there was also the sound of opening the door. Ling raised his eyes and saw a black-haired and green-eyed male appearing at the door wearing a slim-fitting dress, and asked him coldly, "What are you doing here?" The moment he saw the male worm, a sudden electric current rose from the solace of Ling's feet, rushed across Ling's body within a tenth of a second, and climbed to the top of his head. The speed of the heartbeat has never been so fast, and the ring finger can even feel the sudden beating blood vessels, and there is a hot flush on the cheeks. The corners of the male's eyes and eyebrows were cold and arrogant, but Ling felt that he was so attractive to him. He could not deny that this face was not considered attractive in Zerg's aesthetics. Compared with the rare double black in Song Jianchu, he barely had curled black hair, which would be burgundy against the light. The eyes are not round enough, but sharp and narrow eyes, and the emerald green pupils are dull, reminiscent of a cold snake. The nose is not slender and small, and the thin lips are not as pink and rosy as the petals of Song Jianchu, which makes him look even more inaccessible when he is squeezed. But looking at this face, Ling couldn't deny that he was so attracted to himself. He almost turned away in embarrassment, worried that his eyes would betray his thoughts. Thinking of the surprise and banter that might appear on the opponent's face, Ling felt that he would rather leave the planet overnight. The reserved and stable adult females made him unable to imagine such a scene. He whispered, "Don't do anything." "Oh? Really?" The male worm walked to the bed in 2 steps, and the distance between them suddenly narrowed. Ling felt at a loss for a moment, and was so embarrassed that he almost wanted to spread his wings and quickly escape. But what the male worm said next made him feel like an ice cave. "You are the female of Song Jianchu." Song Jianchu is a very famous male. A random video released on the Star Network can attract hundreds of millions of clicks. He who often appears next to Song Jianchu will be recognized sooner or later. But Ling didn't expect it to be so early. To be precise, Ling is not a female of Song Jianchu. Song Jianchu has never signed an agreement with him, nor has he notarized with him. Ling can only be regarded as a female who once admired Song Jianchu. But so what? With a male-to-male ratio of 100 to 1, as long as the males want to, they will naturally have a lot of innocence, and even the females whose emotional experience is a blank sheet of paper are holding up a generous net worth. Ling did not intend to defend himself. His character was once criticized by his subordinates, and the other party rolled his eyes and said, "Do you think you are the protagonist of the female protagonist in the sadistic drama?" "Boss, it is not popular now that silent dedication is not popular. No matter how many males you do, I don't know, what are the benefits besides dying the audience?" Ling's answer was smashing piles of documents on the opponent's head, "Go away and get rid of the garbage." The newly adult female was stunned, "I'm not a cleaner." Glancing at him sloppily, "Then am I?" The friend said quietly, "You are the cleaner." It's not a quietly dedicated character, but Ling's experience tells him that many times what others want is not the truth. More often, others know the truth better than him. The explanation is often more fierce attack. Looking at his silent profile, the friend slapped his seal on the document while muttering, "In any case, at least say it." Ling rested his chin with one hand, "Do you know I didn't say it again?" At that moment, Ling was not sure about his expression or whether it had revealed anything, and the look in his friend's eyes became very surprised. He thought of many things. In the dark and gloomy dungeon, The angry Klein larva clutched the officer's clothes. I didn't kill the male. Under the cold and dazzling operating lamp, the stunned Klein larva lay on the dissection table and muttered, I am not sick. In the solemn trial court, the expressionless adult Kleinworm said word by word, I did not defect. The truth doesn't really matter, does it? They just wanted to capture a precious Klein bug. Over the years, Ling had already lost the strength to argue. Lumo grabbed his collar, and Ling slowly turned his head. This male is arrogant, domineering, unreasonable, weak but extremely arrogant, and is a low-level male that can be seen everywhere. But at this moment Ling hoped extremely, if he met him first, it would be fine. Unfortunately, what he hoped was never realized. The female's face paled at a speed visible to the naked eye. Even Lumo himself didn't expect this sentence to be so lethal. He even had a bunch of backhands that he didn't release, and the speed at which the scum value increased made him dizzy. He swallowed, his paws numb. Yes, or it will stop here for today. The female's eyes were blank, her eyes, which were as beautiful as pigeon blood gems, lost their brilliance, and at first glance they seemed blind. He looked around blankly, but did not find anything to support him. He stood up in silence, brushed shoulders with Lumo, and went straight to the door. Where are you going? The female's voice was hoarse, go find Song Jianchu. No. Lumo's white face flushed with anger, he grabbed Ling's hand and pulled it hard. The tall female was torn by the male so that she staggered and lost her center of gravity, and was about to fall down slantingly. He stared with red eyes and waved his left hand feebly in the air, but he didn't catch anything. He pressed directly on Lumo, and the two fell to the floor. Lumo. At the very moment, Ling adjusted his center of gravity in the air, exchanged seats with Lumo, and became Lumo's cushion. Lumo twitched his mouth, he just heard the sound of the female worm knocking the back of his head to the floor. It was really an extremely loud sound, and Lumo felt a dull pain in the back of his head. Hiss! But as the saying goes, take advantage of his illness and kill him. Lumo supported himself with his hands, raised his head slightly, and smiled innocently and cruelly at Ling. Song Jianchu is very popular with females, right? It's not the same as a male like me. He used his fingers to hook a strand of silver hair around Ling's temple. The genetic level is very low, and only D is detected. It's a waste male. He tilted his head, his curly black hair trembled, and Ling's eyes couldn't help being attracted by the black hair. I know you are very high grade, A grade, no, it should be an S grade female. Only males like Song Jianchu are worthy of you. But I want to touch it. At such a close distance, Lumo could not find any flaws on Ling's face. A great sense of guilt surged in his heart, and while feeling that he was really not a thing, he kept chattering, I guess where you are. Talk about marriage and marry. Registered. Or, has been secretly concluded. Ling lowered his eyes and said nothing. Wow! Lumo buried his face in the female's neck, and muttered the most sinful sentence in his life. Man, wife. I like people and wives the most. At this moment, Lumo felt that something in his heart made a bang sound, powdered into ashes, and then passed away with the wind. System, it's your morals, host. Lumo showed a holy smile. He pressed closely to Ling's chest, and the other party trembled slightly. Although the amplitude was very slight, they were so close that Lumo could clearly feel it. He raised his head, about crossing an important stage in his life. He only felt that the whole person was dizzy. He stared at the female's face and said, when we conclude the bond, you should never think about Song Jianchu again. Take a look at you. You are destined to be only worthy of being with a trash male like me. The male threw down his announcement viciously, and then left without looking back. Ling lay on the ground for a long time. The cold and numb hands and feet were washed away by the backflow of blood a little bit, causing itchy tingling. Without the experience of wandering at the bottom, you can never imagine truly vicious sentences. This male worm, which has not yet metamorphosed, rode viciously on his chest, speaking like a cat with teeth and claws. Wouldn't he think that this level of words is enough? It's very light. Ling squinted his eyes and looked at the repair marks on the ceiling. Suddenly, he felt that it was not so abrupt. The eyes of the male worm looking at him were bright and clean, completely different from the eyes that Ling had seen before. He has seen all kinds of eyes, blue, green, pink, yellow, all full of malice. Later, I saw a pair of black eyes, full of warmth and kindness, sympathy and hope. He was still very young and plunged in, but he didn't know that the disguised malice was more terrifying than the direct malice. These eyes are just the opposite. It seems to be full of viciousness and fierceness, but it is very vain. With just a single swipe, you can see what's hidden in the deep layer. Ling doesn't know how to describe it, but it must be something very warm. He slowly raised his arms, covering his eyes, his lips tightened and straightened. But the ears gradually became red. What happened? Lumo closed the door and walked to his room. At first, he tried his best to maintain a leisurely pace, unconsciously speeding up his pace, and in the end he almost ran back to his room. It seemed as if a mad dog was chasing him and biting him. Help! He tightly wrapped himself in a quilt and kowtowed to the Mantian god and Buddha. I'm guilty. I'm a scum. I should be arrested. The police uncle surrendered myself. I broke the harmony and stability of the society. The system couldn't stand it anymore, and comforted, in fact, there is still a good news, and a better news. Lumo murmured, quickly speak system, your scum value has increased. Lumo lifted his spirits, so, what about the better news? System, only added a little bit. Lumo couldn't cry even though he was crying. He swallowed like a dead person. If this is good news, it must be great news that I am killed by a truck now. Thinking about the benefits the system is justified, this shows that you did not particularly hurt the female, and the subject's mentality is also part of the score. Lumo cautiously said, is it possible, because he was hurt so much by me and he was numb? System. Lumo, well, you don't need to say. The worst thing Lumo ever did since he was a child was to let his friend pigeons go, and fought fiercely in the internet cafe for an afternoon, and his friend also dumbly waited for him all afternoon. This incident would often suddenly come to his mind at midnight until 10 years later, causing him to hold his head against the wall all night without restful sleep. And now there is one more. He collapsed onto the bed and whispered, I'm resting. System, good dreams. Facts have proved that Lumo is not worthy of good dreams. He was chased by a dog all night in his dream, and he had never seen that what big dog, chasing him to cry for father and mother in his dream, and when he woke up, he felt that he didn't have a good piece of meat all over his body. He rolled out of the bed, getting dressed dying. The system couldn't bear to say, should we take another day off today? Do not. Lumo looked fearless after breaking the jar, I am not afraid at all. After that, he didn't knock on the door at all and opened Ling's door rudely. Get up, let's go to register for marriage. Let's bring the time to half an hour ago. Ling's work and rest have always been regular. Even if he fell asleep late last night, he woke up in the morning without any movement. He took out a brand new communication device from the space button he carried with him. The communication device equipped by the military is dedicated to work. As soon as I turned on the communicator, the screen full of messages kept dripping and dripping. It is completely conceivable how the other party gritted his teeth and sent out messages. Boss, where have you been, boss? Boss, I'm going to die if you don't come back, do you know how tortured by the army's old bugs? Boss, do so many files really exist? Are you not a military attaché? Boss, I was found in a meeting to send you a message. Now I want to write a review of 8,000 words. Boss, help! There are so many densely populated trees, it is estimated that there are hundreds of them, and the time span is as long as 20 hours. It is estimated that he will be given Didadai whenever he is free. Ling deleted all the messages and sent a message to a friend and subordinate. Stop Song Jianchu. The communicator was quiet for a while, and then went crazy. Fuck boss, you finally survived. No, boss, you said it was too late, Song Jianchu had already been on the starship to look for you. Boss, are you still there? Hey? NS. Ling, insult the boss, add 5,000 to the review book. Not to mention how the communicator would be screaming and crying, Ling and Lumo went outside. A streamlined black suspension vehicle parked in the spacious courtyard. When Ling looked at the car, he couldn't help being a little surprised. This model is very common in the Imperial City, but it does not mean that it is very popular. On the contrary, its price is unaffordable by ordinary Zerg. Those who buy it are usually very high-level males, so they have to add the wealth brought by their many female waiters to have ample money to raise the car. Lumo is only a class male, and there are no females. How can he afford this car? But no matter what, Lumo seems absolutely not short of money. One more bargaining chip. A look of disappointment flashed across Ling's eyes. Lumo. He clearly received the disappointment in the eyes of the female. He couldn't help but looked at his old man suspiciously. He bought this car entirely to highlight his extravagant, lewd, and leisurely character. Later, he added countless expensive designs to the factory configuration. A car roof was completely factory-built. Profit for a month. So what is this female disappointed in? Disappointed? Didn't I drive Long Nian to take you to get married? Oh, female. What are you going to do? Why don't you get in the car? Yes, male lord. Lumo consciously climbed into the passenger seat, which perfectly fits his personality as a wasteful snack. The hovering car starts slowly and speeds up quickly and smoothly, which shows that the driver's skills are really good. At the same time, the radio in the car automatically started broadcasting today's news. Lumo listened for a while, and there was no news that he cared about. On this deserted planet, most of the things that happen every day are similar. It's not fighting for territory, or tourists stealing and crossing, and occasionally reports of some male worms that show up in the family. Remember the lace news compiled by hearsay. The only thing that reminded Lumo a little bit of spirit was the third news. A starship of the latest model crashed onto this planet early this morning, with a wounded senior male and his female attendant on it. Wow, senior male. Lumo hasn't seen a truly advanced male after he crossed. Based on his inferior body that is indistinguishable from humans in the previous life, his barren imagination stops at senior males must be able to use their mental power to get the courier. Ling's attention seemed to be attracted, a solemn expression appeared on his face. Lumo pretended to ask casually, how about it, is this car okay? Ling, it's okay, the operation is simpler than the starship. Lumo. He tightened his seat belt angrily. Oh, female. However, Ling did not notice the male worm's mood change. Because he is a straight steel female. No, because he was attracted by the broadcast. The high male insect and his female attendant, this combination reminds Ling of Song Jianchu. In fact, he hasn't made an agreement with Song Jianchu, and the male can't feel his position through spiritual resonance. In the vast universe, the footprints of the Zerg race are spread over more than a dozen galaxies, not to mention that he may have jumped out of the Zerg's domain. If this high-level male worm is the song book, it would be too outrageous. He still doesn't believe in fate's guidance and love can create miracles, things that only appear in third-rate novels. But time and time again, the facts were before him. Song Jianchu, a male worm, could always get the result he wanted from countless possibilities with amazing luck. This male is the possibility of Song Jianchu, infinitely approaching 100%. Ling's judgment is also known for its precision in the mighty Zerg army. Although he very much hoped that his judgment this time would be frustrated, as mentioned earlier, what he hoped has never been realized. This injured high-grade male worm is indeed Song Jianchu. At this moment, in the most advanced ward of the hospital, Song Jianchu's body was covered with the best medicine that the hospital could provide, and he was lying pale on the soft bed. But these are the excessive protection of the males by the Zerg. Song Jianchu's injury will come to the hospital a little later, and he will heal on his own. The one who is really seriously injured should be Wenger, a comatose military woman lying in the next ward with broken bones all over her body. They encountered a violent cosmic storm on their way to Leap. The endless universe is full of dangers, but the ranking of such disasters is second to none. Unlike its unremarkable name, it was almost dead for a lifetime. Wenger almost fought his life before he reluctantly manipulated the starship to jump out of the storm. Song Jianchu lying in the safety cabin was safe, and Wenger became what he is now. Before pushing him into the safety cabin, the ordinary military female who has always been taciturn, said in her life's most austere voice, "The hero. I love you with my life." At that moment, Song Jianchu vowed that he would remember Wenger for a lifetime. Fortunately, Wenger was fine, otherwise he would definitely regret it. He had to go to Wenger as soon as he woke up, but was stopped by the doctor. He was not allowed to step out of the ward until he was fully recovered. Although he was very anxious, he had no choice but to give up. I had to lie down by the window, looking bored at the scenery outside. The hospital is located in the most central area of the entire city. At the same time, it also brings together the most noble Zergs on this shabby planet. All the females ran out as soon as they heard the high-level males forced to land. They drove a rare car on this planet and blocked the entrance of the hospital mightily. Song Jianchu exhaled uninterestedly. On this planet, the females with the highest rank are barely B ranks. Females reaching rank A can break through the universe physically, and it is impossible to stay here. At this moment, a black floating car attracted his attention. The car swept through the air, and Song Jianchu's powerful mental power made him clearly see the appearance of the car, and he couldn't help but widen his eyes slightly. On this planet, there will be this kind of car? He was very impressed with this car, because in the past, Ling also gave him a car that was exactly the same. He asked Ling how much money, but the silver-haired reedy female just smiled, "I bought it casually, it's worthless." Until a few days ago, he was upset because of Ling's departure and accidentally drove the car into a store on the side of the road, and the whole car was scrapped. At this time, he wanted to buy another one, and finally knew the price of this car. It is simply a sky-high price. A car can empty all the wealth that Wenger brings. Is this what Ling said is worthless? Song Jianchu's line of sight followed the car closely until the car stopped somewhere. He wanted to see what kind of females came out of the car. To his disappointment, what came down was a black-haired green-eyed male. The male insect has an extremely cold and handsome face, and it is almost two extremes from Song Jianchu. If it is placed on the earth, it must be a face that is sought after by thousands of people. But here, it does not conform to the Zerg's aesthetic. Just as Song Jianchu was about to look away, he stepped out from the other side of the car with a pair of slender and muscular legs wearing military boots. Lumo didn't give Ling Hao a look. Although he hadn't given it before. But now it's even colder. They passed through the screaming crowd one after another. These females were so excited that Lumo smelled a pheromone scent that was several times more intense than usual. He even smelled the strong pheromone of snail noodles, which was nothing to survive. It was easy to squeeze into the empty marriage registration office. Lumo's face was black, and Demogindeo sat down at the counter. The staff tremblingly handed him a divorce registration paper. Lumo was so angry that he shot the counter. "I'm here to get married. What's going on today? The staff is a weak sub-family. It is not easy for the subfamily to find a job on this planet. When Lumo was frightened, she turned pale in an instant and bowed quickly, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Intimidate innocent passers-by, add 1 to the scum value. Lumo's face was a little dark, and he picked up the pen to register on it. After the panic, the subfamily finally mustered up the courage to guide the process for our honorable class male. Sir, here is the property under the name of the female, please do not fill in your own property. Lumo became angry from embarrassment, I'll show it off. What's wrong with me if I have money? First, sir, look here, do you allow the female to go out? And do you let him continue to work? Lumo was taken aback. If it is Song Jianchu, the protagonist of the world, she will definitely choose to let the female go out to work. This is respect. What a thoughtful and touching love. If he had made the same choice as Song Jianchu, then he would definitely not get the scum value on Ling. He looked at Ling, and the female waited quietly for him to make a decision. But if he applies to deprive Ling of his job, he will get a female worm that will stick to him forever. The system promptly said, Host, in my judgment, he will definitely become a Stockholmer patient. Then I fall in love with you, and every day I crazily deduct your scum value, deduct it on the walls of your house, deduct it to your heart and lungs. Lumo took a deep breath and made a choice. At this moment, Ling remembered a past event. It's not a past event, it's an old event not far or near. Song Jianchu was not so conspicuous at the beginning. Ling had seen his files, and for a long period of time, he was a male with no mind. The genetic evaluation barely touched the edge of the D class. If it was weaker, even the Zerg would choose to euthanize him. After all, the continuation of such genes is not a good thing for the Zerg. At this time, Kongxing's intellectual brain center matched Wenger to the Song Jianchu of dementia. Now that I think about it, this is probably the ability of Song Jianchu that can be called the Son of Destiny, and it has begun to show its clues. After all, although Wenger is not the top female, he is still very good. He has been in the military for only a few years, and he has been playing from the bottom up, relying on solid military exploits to quickly get promoted all the way. When he was matched, he was already a colonel. Once matched with the dementia male, in order to take care of the male, he will be deprived of his military rank, and he will be imprisoned at home, with no hope of future. Ling had also mediated this matter. Wenger's father was his teacher, and it was this respectable female who insisted on proving his innocence when Ling was accused of betrayal. If it weren't for him, Ling, who was not full of wings at the time, would not be able to escape from prison. And the apparent prison, in fact, he would be sent somewhere secretly, just like all Klein bugs. Even if it was to repay the teacher, he had to get Wenger out. Unexpectedly, Wenger refused. Ling leaned slantingly on the soft chair, her long legs overlapped on the mahogany table without hesitation. The black military cap was obliquely covering his face, covering his eyes, only to see him biting a piece of smoke. The ash was very long, and it trembled and couldn't fall off. A few of his neat and delicate military uniforms were loosened at this time, revealing a white neck. In the impression of all females in the military department, Ling has always been an unpredictable female. He looks like this most of the time. He is dangling, his uniform is not well worn, and he doesn't look right when he walks. I came here today to stop by, and I went there tomorrow to beg for cigarettes. I couldn't tell that he was one of the 5 Zerg army commanders. Fortunately, he is still very concerned about work. This female seems to have unlimited energy and physical strength. Other army commanders need 5 lieutenants to complete the official duties, and he only needs 1 lieutenant. As for the complaint of the sole adjutant, it will not be ignored. The unusually conspicuous silver-haired red eyes made him stand out no matter where he went. But very occasionally, this female worm will show unusually deep eyes, like a bottomless abyss, with no bottom in sight. Some soldiers have seen him look like this, it was on the battlefield. For 3 consecutive days and 3 nights, the bright red blood of the alien beast dyed the silver hair scarlet. He held a long knife in his hand and stood on the tall corpse mountain. The sunset loomed behind him. Like a lunatic on the battlefield. Like a ruffian on the battlefield. And now, Wenger sensed a hint of disharmony from the Legion commander's body. He was sitting in the shadows, with silver hair running down his arms, and he looked at Wenger quietly, like a sculpture. I don't know how long he stood, the long soot finally couldn't hold it, and it fell on the pure black uniform of the Legionnaire. Wenger, your father is disappointed. His voice was cold, without fluctuations. Why? Wenger only felt that his feet were made of mud, and he could not feel the presence of his legs. The true top females have such terrifying repressive power. Because. Wenger heard his hoarse voice, I love him. Madness. Ling still remembered his mood at the time. Stunned, absurd, and even a little ridiculous. You need to know, Ling pointed out to him, even if you are married, I can destroy the record. Your past is still innocent. You can find a really good male. He is excellent. Ling. Wenger actually broke through his suppression at this moment, and shouted almost angrily, even if you are the commander of the army, I will not allow you to slander him like this. Ling estimated that his face at the time should be very exciting. From stun to doubt, finally laughed. He sat up straight, retracted his legs from the table, and said, Okay, take your own stool, Colonel Wenger. He doesn't care about this mess at all. Deprived of his military rank, he was imprisoned at home, and he didn't do anything about his corps commander's dime relationship. Unexpectedly, Wenger still appeared in the Legion in a military uniform the next day. Ling Xiaomi leaned over and whispered, What? Was he returned? Wenger glanced at him with that serious face, League Commander, please respect yourself. Later, Ling learned that the male had chosen to let Wenger, his only female servant, return to the military headquarters instead of serving him at home. Not bad. This is the first time I have seen this male worm. He was dangling his smoke thoughtfully, and when he turned his head he saw a beautiful pair of black males standing quietly at the door of the office, smiling softly at him. You are the commander of the army, I'm here to pick up my waitress. With a click, Ling's smoke fell off. Thinking back now, the so-called love at first sight, how much calculation is mixed in the end. Ling, do you like me? Do not know. Then let's change the way of thinking. Will you be angry when you see me talking to other females? What do you ask this for? Then you just like me. The double black male happily turned around in a circle, and the corners of his eyes and brows were overflowing with joy. He stopped and tilted his head at Ling, I like you too. Oh, that's what I like. Ling looked at Song Jianchu's eyes, suppressing the last bit of doubt in his heart. Since everyone said he fell in love with Song Jianchu, he should indeed fall in love with Song Jianchu. After all, he never knew what love was. I'm calling you. Ling pulled back his thoughts from the memories, his face was not so good. He and Lumo were sitting on the chairs in front of the counter, but he was a head taller than Lumo. He was probably not happy to look up at him. Lumo stood up and said, Hey, I ask you. Ling nodded. It seems that he has lost the ability to laugh like before. If he changes to the previous one, he must pick up the little male worm and make his face flush with annoyance when his feet hang in the air, but there is no way to dance. But now he just nodded blankly. Obviously. I am already very happy in my heart. Lumo lifted his chin, how much can you make a month? Ling estimated that he reported a number. Lumo. Very, very good. Lumo snapped the registration form, let him go out to work. Since it's my female, you have to make good money and bring me rich fortune. Lumo felt the registration form to enjoy the future, then turned to ask Asian female, what if he hides the money privately? As a staff member, it is the first time that Yahan has encountered this situation. His contempt was almost overwhelming. There is supervision. Females are not allowed to go out to work. It is the females' bounden duty to stay at home and serve the males. Only the extremely desolate males will ask the females to go out and make money. But females seldom want to do this. They just chose males, but it doesn't mean they abandon their careers. Those who really care about females must give them freedom even at the risk of damaging their reputation. But this male in front of me. Seeing the greedy and proud black-haired male, the Asian female couldn't help but twitched her mouth. It is the most influential waste male. Why did such a powerful female pick such a male? You must have been cheated. Under Asian female's extremely sympathetic gaze, a very faint smile passed over Ling's mouth. It just swept past, like a swallowtail swept over the water, and disappeared in no time. He looked at Lumo, and the male worm secretly wiped a handful of sweat on the seams of his pants with the cover of his sleeves. Ling. A chuckling passed the corner of his mouth again. Is it correct? Lumo checked the registration form again, especially in the column of does the female retain her position after marriage, for a long time. That serious look is beyond doubt. This is indeed a low one. Then the registration form was carefully handed over to the staff. The Asian female looked at their leaving back with pity, and shook her head helplessly. Male. The suspended vehicle is parked in the underground parking lot. At this time, the alley was empty, and everyone ran out to watch the males. The parking lot was full of cars, and Ling and Lumo's car just squeezed into a car illegally. Lumo sneered, untouchables who don't understand the rules. His smile came from the bottom of his heart. Even the system was beside him desperately slapped him, chick chick. The host is making rapid progress. He seemed to have suddenly opened up, and just now even in the face of an unsolvable desperate situation, he opened the way of life. He feels that he is better than himself. Lumo lazily pointed to the car, you drive him out. Yes, male lord. The cool black levitating car slowly rose, and Lumo stared at the open car door in the air, damn bitch. Do you want me to break my leg? He picked up the dirty words and accused him wantonly, until the car slowly stopped in front of him. He took a breath and stretched out the noble hand of the class male, help me. At this moment, he heard a cold laugh. Slag value plus 10. Received by the protagonist's contempt, the scum value is increased by 100. The system's voice is unusually high, and the mood is unusually full. The little assistant of the strategy reminds you, the protagonist will be strongly accused in front of you. Please welcome the arrival of a large number of scum values in the fullest posture. Damn it! Lumo suddenly turned his head and looked in the direction of the voice. A handsome young man with black hair and dark eyes, with an unremoved bandage on his body, was looking at them angrily. His back is straight, reminiscent of the proud green pine, and like the bright moon. Lumo took a breath. His brother, the smell is so irritating. Lumo was actually quite curious about Song Jianchu. He has been in this world for 3 years, knowing the temperament of females. Perhaps it is the characteristics of the Zerg race, or the obedient nature in the blood. Each of them faithfully fulfills the obligation of the race to continue. No matter how bad he did, the females could find a reasonable reason for him, and they could endure Lumo's malice as they should. In Ling's brief information, it can be seen that Song Jianchu is a male who insists on freedom and equality. Lumo wanted to see how he twisted the thoughts of these stubborn females. I saw it all. Song Jianchu took a step forward, his eyes flashing with cold anger. I have seen everything you did in the registration office just now. Lumo spread his hands indifferently. Why, are you going to teach me? The whereabouts of the females are originally determined by the males, Lumo said with disdain. I just let him go out to work. What's wrong with what I did? Song Jianchu angrily said, you just use him as a money-making machine. Lumo blinked his eyes. Then you mean, let me deprive him of his position and let him stay at home and serve me honestly? Song Jianchu looked contemptuous. what do you think of him? He is free. LUMO. Is this the so-called protagonist? It seems a bit silly. Song Jianchu's gaze shifted on the floating car. He was still wondering how the people on this barren star could afford such an expensive car, but he understood it as soon as he saw Ling. The male must have coaxed Ling and let Ling buy him a car. How could he let Ling fall into the hands of a male worm with a sinister heart like this? Thinking of this, he stretched out his hand in Ling's direction and said gently, "Ling, don't be angry with me anymore. You can see it too, this male doesn't love you at all, he hasn't even thought about your wishes." Lumo stood there, shaking his legs. At this moment, he heard a very small voice. And this voice didn't come from where, but from his spiritual sea. "Lumo, what are you doing?" The system said mysteriously, "Don't move around, keep your hooligan smile, I'm on the live broadcast now." "Lumo, hey?" At this moment, the cover of a newly opened live broadcast room hung a picture of the three confronting each other. Song Jianchu's face is the traffic password of the Zerg network. Many live broadcast rooms will hang his photos to trick the insects into. Zergs are used to this kind of tricks, but there are always worms who do not give up and enter every live broadcast room stubbornly. But this time it was true. Fuck. It's really Song Jianchu. Help, he's so handsome. All of a sudden, the audience in the live broadcast room of this treasure was found running around to inform each other. The heat in the live broadcast room is just like an explosion. Lumo was stunned, and suddenly realized. Yes. Why didn't he expect it? Although the female worms all have the serious disease in their brains, the one standing in front of him now is the most popular Song Jianchu of the entire Zerg clan. As long as he keeps provoking Song Jianchu, oppressing Song Jianchu, and exposing his villain face in full view, isn't that scum value handy? Thinking of this, Lumo immediately had an idea. He raised his chin arrogantly, "Mr. Song, to ask me to say that you are really a shame to the Zerg. Since ancient times, the male is the sky, the female is the earth, the sky should be pressed against the earth, and the female should listen to the male. This is called female virtue." Lumo waved his hand, "If the males are too accustomed to the females, then it will be against the sky." As soon as he said this, the barrage in the live broadcast room paused for a moment, and soon it started again. It's true. There is no alternative. After all, it is the rule from ancient times to the present. Song Jianchu's eyes widened angrily, "It's rotten. What kind of is this since ancient times?" Song Jianchu cursed, "They are also worms. How can worms be born with inferior worms? Don't they know how to cry in painless stones? The ones who are really inferior are those of us who lie down in their flesh and blood." Song Jianchu said sadly, "We males have enjoyed the best conditions and the best treatment since we were born, but what have we done? Pull the female worm, take pleasure in hurting the female worm, and you," he pointed to Lumo's nose and said, "You are the most disgusting one of them, and your coldness and ruthlessness have reached the limit." After his deafening speech, echoing voices gradually appeared in the live broadcast room. "Yes. Why? We are also bugs. I've been bullied by the males a long time ago, my brother was killed by the males. It's our eternal little toffee. Song Jianchu is really great. Who is the male worm opposite him? It's disgusting to look at. Slag value plus 10. Slag value plus 50. Slag value plus 500. Lumo raised the corners of his mouth and shook his head helplessly. "Which male you are from the countryside? I really don't know." Sure enough, as soon as he said this, the barrage in the live broadcast room was flashed up again. "Ha ha ha, he himself is the male from the country. I am afraid he still doesn't know that Song Jianchu is an Alavel male. A Class D male taunts a Class A male. Ha ha ha, Song Jianchu's repertoire, he has started again. Quickly, I can't wait to watch the face slap." Song Jianchu was taken aback, a funny expression appeared in his eyes, and he asked softly, "Am I Lumo naturally nodded and said, "Yes, you don't understand the rules so much, but you have to laugh generously when you go out in the future." After thinking about it, he said again, "In order not to shame your reputation, I have to educate you." The camera shot Lumo's face timely. He leaned against the car and pointed at Ling from the window. "I see it, S-class female. But what about that? Although I'm only a D-class male, as long as I'm a male for one day, he has to kneel down. The day before me. This is the rule. Since you are also a male worm, naturally you can't forget this. Noble female worms are hungry and thirsty. As long as they have tasted the male worms, they will no longer be able to live without the male worms." In the live broadcast room, the triumphant expression of the black-haired and green-eyed male was magnified in aroused anger. "Who is this worm? I need to know all his information in 3 minutes. How come there is such a puxin male? Even if the male is precious, this class female is not something he can touch, okay? But the sharp-eyed worms have already noticed something strange. Wait, don't you think this female is familiar? Is there a second silver-haired reed-eyed female? NS. There is also that car. Didn't you recognize that this is the latest type of suspension car? I can't afford it after saving for 3 months. I recognize it too. What happened to this female?" Seeing that the barrage was going crooked, Lumo had to bring the topic back. He stretched out his sinful hand, and the target was Ling's collar. God knows how he said those words. For a moment, he felt that his soul seemed to be out of his shell, his soul was tumbling in the void, howling, and kowtow to all the audience who saw this scene. Bang bang bang! Sorry, scum like me is not worthy to live in the world. But his shell is still fulfilling his duties faithfully, and he wants to push this drama to the top. Song Jianzhi must not be able to bear it. He was actually under his nose to take advantage of Ling. Sure enough, the moment his hand touched the collar, Song Jianzhi couldn't help being angry anymore. Stop! At this moment, time seemed to stretch. Song Jianzhi's movements were like slow play. Lumo could even see the trajectory of his fist, drawing an arc in the air and hitting his left cheek with this punch. With his D-class male body, he absolutely couldn't bear the force. It can range from facial fractures to concussions, and may even have permanent sequelae. For example, disfigurement. Hold on to. The system shouted, "This punch is worth 10 million. Lumo." He closed his eyes. Amen. Boom! The loud crash sound reverberated in the spacious underground parking lot, but the expected pain did not come. Lumo opened one eye. Song Jianzhi's fist was almost close to his face. It's not that the other party's heart softened at the critical moment. A slender and powerful hand grasped Song Jianzhi's hand tightly. It was Ling who stood in front of Lumo. Fuck! Do you see his movements clearly? As expected to be N's rank female, even if the level is a little lower, she can't do this kind of action. Yes, yeah, if it were me, I would choose to push the male away, but then the male could be injured because of my too much strength. He actually went around from the other side of the car and blocked it so close. Fist. And I want to remind you that Song Jianzhi's level is also very high, and his speed and strength are comparable to level females. I can't take it anymore. I want to say his name out loud. Legion Commander, my legionnaire. Song Jianzhi looked at Ling in disbelief. Ling, are you actually helping him? Do you want to help this male? Ling Zhuguang glanced at Lumo's figure. At this time, Lumo looked like an eggplant beaten by Shuang. His head downcast made him raise the corners of his lips. The expression in his eyes just now revealed exactly 4 words. It's innocent. The heart is ashamed. Even the hand that was passed over was shaking gently. Perhaps Lumo hadn't noticed that his skin was very thin, so thin that as long as he was slightly depressed, the ends of his eyes would become red. He looked like he was about to cry. Yeah, I just want to help him. Ling Man said casually, I don't want to listen to your preaching anymore, Song Jianchu. Song Jianchu looked at him, full of gritted teeth with hatred for iron and steel. Are you willing to kneel at his feet? How about I kneel at your feet? Ling Ding looked at Song Jianchu. Song Jianchu, you said so nicely, what did you do after you married Wenger? The live broadcast room on StarNet was soaring to the sky, but on this barren and backward planet, fanatical females were crowded on the dilapidated road. They didn't know that the males of their hearts had already secretly left the hospital. That's how you treat an A-class male. The pale female still has scars deep into the flesh, but he has no time to take care of his pain. He cross-examines, Jianchu was injured in the first place, but you didn't take care of him. If something happens to him. Opposite him is the fat and white dean. The dean gave birth to a kind face. He is still in his prime of life. He always has a healthy blush on his face, looking like a funny and amiable mascot. But at this time, the blush on his face disappeared, and his 5 senses were tightened together because of panic. I'm sorry, he said repeatedly, the hand holding the handkerchief trembling constantly, and tremblingly wiped the cold sweat that oozes from his face. This is the negligence of our hospital, and we will not evade this responsibility. Yes, the female who was in charge of taking care of Mr. Song was a newcomer, and I still don't know the rules here. Wenger's stern gaze flicked across the faces of all the females present. He has been on the battlefield for a long time, relying on solid military skills to climb all the way. If he does not deliberately constrain, even the ordinary females will feel uncomfortable. What's more, there are more weak sub-family nurses here. The coercion from the military female caused all the females in the room to lower their heads unbearably at the moment they met him. And one of the sub-families with an unusually pale face stood still in the corner. Tears of fear came from her eyes, and stammered, I don't know why, I suddenly wanted to sleep. Mr. Song just woke up. Gone. This is what Song Jianchu is good at. Hypnotize others through the inducement of mental power, regardless of whether it is the sub-family who is particularly weak in mental power or physical power, it is even more unable to resist. Wenger glanced at him coldly. If there is something wrong with the Jianchu, you will have 10 lives that are not enough to pay. After speaking, he turned and strode away, leaving the female in a room staring at each other. Wenger had just woke up from a coma, looking pale, but inside was still dilapidated and needed a good rest. But no one dared to stop him at this time. Wenger walked straight to the underground parking lot. After he concluded the bond with Song Jianchu, his spiritual power was also linked. Although it was not as close as the blood bond of the female monarch, it was enough for him to perceive the direction of Song Jianchu. Perception told him that Song Jianchu is now very safe. But he was still scared. What if he didn't wake up in time? What if Song Jianchu is in danger? He quickened his pace, and when he entered the parking lot, he heard the familiar voice from a distance. Song Jianchu, you said so nicely, what did you do after marrying Wenger? Song Jianchu raised his head, his pure black eyes flashed with warm and firm light. I will not deprive him of his military rank. His dream is to become a military woman. How can I stop him from realizing his dream? Even if this will damage my reputation, I will not hesitate. The camera accurately captured this scene and gave him a close-up. Song Jianchu looks so kind and pure that every viewer who saw this scene couldn't help being deeply moved by it. Mom, is there really such a female in the world? He is an angel. Oh, I really want to cry. If only my lord could do this too. Song Jianchu kept warm and compassionate eyes, and stretched out his hand towards Ling. Ling, I'm sorry that I haven't explained to you, please forgive my waywardness. If you want to accuse me of my behavior, it will put you to shame after marriage. I cannot refute it either. Song Jianchu lowered his head, showing a frustrated and fragile expression. Whenever he showed this expression, Ling always became very gentle. Even if he was awkward, Ling would forgive him for no reason. It should be said that all females could not refuse such Song Jianchu, and the barrage in the live broadcast room was densely swept past. Quick! Hug him. I order you to hug him. Leader. You can't be so cruel. Ling looked at Song Jianchu blankly. The other party lowered his head because of frustration, and the soft black hair seemed to lose its light. So boring. When Song Jianchu was depressed, Ling would feel that the softest part of his heart was severely stabbed. He is used to enduring physical pain, but never knows how to resist inner pain. No matter how busy he was at the time, he would put down all his work and awkwardly tried to make Song Jianchu happy. For example, driving a starship across 3 galaxies just to buy a pet mentioned in the morning by Song Jianchu. But now looking at such Song Jianchu, Ling is a little surprised to find that his heart is so calm. No, it can't be completely calm. In the calm mind, a faint boredom is gradually rising. His favorite black hair in the past has now become a part of his dislike. At this moment, Ling felt a slight force and grabbed the corner of his clothes. Looking down, the black-haired and greenied male stared at him fiercely and threatened, "You are already my female." But Ling's eyes moved involuntarily to the other's curly black hair. When he went out in the morning, he remembered that the male was standing in front of the mirror, holding a box of hair wax, and fighting his hair angrily for more than half an hour. Poof! I really want to touch it. Am I talking to you? Did you hear that? I understand, Lord. Ling clenched his fist, coughed softly on his mouth, and then concealed his smile. Well, it seems he doesn't hate black hair. He just read Song Jianchu not pleasing to his eyes now. When Ling looked at Song Jianchu, the smile on his face disappeared and became so cold. Song Jianchu, don't pretend it. He lost his patience and no longer wanted to entangle with Song Jianchu. What is the difference between what you did and Lumo? Song Jianchu's eyes widened. Do you compare me with him? Actually compare him with such a low-level male? He is an A-level male. Why do you think this way? Ling Qi laughed. How do you match Lumo? Have you forgotten? Wenger belongs to my legion. You keep saying that you can't stop him, but what have you done? Song Jianchu opened his mouth. Ling interrupted him, you didn't form a blood contract with him, which caused his level to stay at A level. Song Jianchu argued, but he didn't even reach the A grade. Ling raised his eyebrows and said, so he still appreciates you? Thank you for upgrade male who has made a bond with him. After the precious transformation period, his level that should have been soared, only a little higher? Song Jianchu gaped, no, it's not. Stop, I won't tell you this. One of you is willing to fight and the other is willing to suffer. What's wrong with me? Ling smiled while looking at Song Jianchu, but there was no smile in his bright red eyes, and his tone was very soft. You said Lumo used me as a tool for making money, so dear Song Jianchu, Mr. Song. How do I remember that all the monthly wages that the military department paid to Wenger went into your account? Song Jianchu couldn't help taking a step back. Ling's face was his usual smile, but for some reason he felt a chill on his back. For the first time, he discovered that the silver-haired female who used to have no pretensions was so tall. He said, that's what Wenger insisted. Ling tilted his head, oh? Voluntary. Seems to have found a reason. Song Jianchu has some confidence. He looked at Ling's face, and couldn't help being silly. He knew Ling was good-looking, but he never knew Ling was so good-looking. It's like a wild and dangerous leopard, but if he wants to, the leopard will lie down in front of him, revealing its soft belly. I felt trembling just thinking about it. Song Jianchu couldn't help taking a step forward, and said softly, yes, he volunteered, just like the car you gave me. You were also willing at the time, didn't you? Ling squinted his eyes, and an unprecedented storm was brewing in his red eyes. But his expression became softer and softer. He said every word, as if whispering in his lover's ear, it is true. Song Jianchu looked at him idiotically, yes. Ling's eyes looking at Song Jianchu were no different from looking at the dead. Wenger, who had a panoramic view of this scene, was already split. He, who had followed the Legion chief on an expedition, could not have been more familiar with Ling's eyes. When he saw it for the first time, Ling slaughtered 30,000 strange beasts alone. When I saw it for the second time, 5 years later, Ling passed by with Wenger, wearing a whole body of blood from the night. The next day it was reported in the news that 3 generals in the military were assassinated. And now, it's the third time. At this moment, Wenger clearly saw Ling's hand holding the hilt of the knife around his waist. Do not want. Wenger never imagined that he could have such agile speed. He drew out his dagger and threw it towards Ling at the moment of lightning. But even so, it is doomed to be too late. Wenger desperately watched his dagger pass by Ling, firmly nailed to one side of the car body. Song Jianzhu is dead. The sharp long sword is like a broken bamboo, and Ling's killing intent draws a white shadow in the air, and the piercing sound that is so sharp that it pierces the eardrum is a prediction of the arrival of death. When the long knife split the gemstone on Song Jianzhu's collar, the gem shattered into ashes with great strength, but the blade stopped precisely on Song Jianzhu's neck, and there was no blood mark. Wenger lost the strength to support and knelt down slowly. He was very sure that Ling wanted to kill Song Jianzhu, but for some reason, he changed his mind at the last moment. This is almost impossible, even Song Jianzhu cannot change the nature of the Legion commander. He looked at the silver-haired female and gasped in fear. What did you think of at that moment? You should be thankful, I now have a strong sense of self-management. Ling retracted the knife into the scabbard, it's not as impulsive as before. Song Jianzhu only then realized that he almost returned to the west. Shaking his whole body like sieve chaff, he slid down against the wall and sat down. Ling looked down at him with a soft voice, but I advise you not to provoke me in the future. I don't always exercise such restraint. Lumo stared at everything in front of him dumbfounded. Too many things happened in this short instant, and he could hardly react. It seemed that his face was too bad. The moment Ling saw him, a trace of annoyance slipped across his face. The hero. Don't be afraid, I just, accidentally. Did I scare you? There was a gloomy light in the red eyes. If you knew it, you should be more careful. There are obviously more subtle methods to make Song Jianzhu disappear without a trace. Master, my car. Lumo couldn't help it anymore, hugged his old man, and shouted heartily, my car. The sharp dagger was nailed into the car body, all of which sank in, cracking cobweb-like scars. Ling. Wenger. Song Jianzhu. Lumo really wanted to cry. Fire at the city gate. It hurts the pond fish.